can you lay out some of your most widely seen projects? Like what are the things that people would know, or what work have you done that people know?
Probably my most recent projects, I would assume, which would be, I did Pretty Strong, which is an all women's climbing film that came out in 2020. Did that with Never Not Collective, our all women's production team. We just there hadn't been a film that was all women, made by all women. So that was our goal. We started it in 2017, finished it in 2020. And it got a pretty big response, definitely from more the internal climbing community, not like on a huge commercial scale, but we, sold out Boulder Theater, and it was our first short film. And so we did get a lot of praise for that. And then the following year, I shot on the HBO Edge of the Earth, and I did a shoot in Kyrgyzstan, just as a filmer, not a director or any editing or anything like that, just on the ground shooter. And that obviously has gotten big publicity because it's through HBO and on major TV networks and all that sort of stuff. And then I've shot on some Real Rock things, but I haven't like had my own Real Rock piece or anything, but I've, had my footage involved with them, and I know Josh and those guys quite well. So every once in a while I'll have footage that's involved in there to a degree.
Of those, I'm curious, the HBO project, how did that feel for you? I mean, that's pretty mainstream. That's, HBO. That's something you tell your grandma. You're like, I'm working on an HBO project. And she's like, wow, that's so impressive, honey. I mean, is that, how, does that feel any different than other projects you've worked on?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely was different. It was just a lot more production, a lot more camera first, athlete second people, which means it's like, people, that's their job and what they do, and they're really freaking good at it and really dialed. And there's always something really cool about being in a production team like that. A lot more moving parts, right? A lot of people, I think on the small films, like I would go into short climbing films, right? And I'm like directing, I'm producing, I'm shooting, I'm editing most of the time. Like you're wearing every single hat. And the reality is like your skill set is only going to get you so far at those sort of things. And then now you've got a team where you're literally going to have 8 editors that you're never going to see. And you've got just a production dude, and you have just a drone guy, and you just have like a guy taking your cards at the end of the day and charging your batteries, and IT people. And so it's, it's a lot more moving parts, but it gives everybody a more freedom to just do what they do, really cool energy. And these guys that are just really, it was Teton Gravity Research was the main team, like, and a lot of the shooters there were out of their team in Jackson. And I don't know, maybe it's that ski energy. They're like really high energy and all psyched, and it was fun. It was a really fun shoot.
They were just psyched that they didn't have to be in the snow for a change. They're like, it's so nice when you're not wading through powder all day.
Right. I know. They had all kinds of stuff we learned about drinking it blue and this whole stuff, which I had never heard of.
Actually, can you lay out what exactly the HBO project was? Like, how many people was it? What was the objective? What were you guys doing?
Sure. And how many people gets a little tricky. I mean,
how many went down for COVID? How many got removed from the project?
Yeah, iffy. So the project, it was a 4-part series, and I won't speak on the other parts because I wasn't part of them, and I don't think I'll nail it. But this was the climbing segment, and it had Emily Harrington and Adrian Ballinger were the athletes, so they're like the subjects of the piece, and the agenda was to go climb this big wall out in Kyrgyzstan. And so we flew out there. The original objective was to hike in what we had found from the local guide services. It's like this 4-day hike to be safe, especially we were bringing like a ton of equipment and all that sort of stuff. But we started in Bishkek, which is like the capital city. And at that point of the trip, it was a pretty big team. That's why the team numbers get a little weird, because in Bishkek, you had all these other producer people and other filmer and like set designers for the interviews, like so many people that I don't even know them all. And then just like assistants and all that sort of stuff. So it was a really big production in Bishkek where they wanted to get a lot of scene setting and really good interviews done and all that. But then the people that were going to the mountain was a more trimmed down team of the director, Jeff Wright, drone operator, Austin Hopkins, and 2 climbing filmers, Austin Siadak. I don't know if I'm going to say it right. Yeah. Then me as the other kind of climber filmer, even though I was basically not on the wall very much. I was just kind of the athlete person. And then 2 riggers who were from like Adrian's kind of hiking team, Topo and Tico. And then we had like a cook. And then we had Griffin, who was our sort of the IT tech guy. So he was shooting also, but dealing with all the like cards and footage and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's all. Yeah. Guide, like our guide, local guide guy. And then we had a bunch of horsemen carrying our stuff. And then we had a cook and then another 2 kind of guide people.
Any good trip involves some horsemen.
As long as they don't turn on you.
Yeah, classic. But so it sounds like you guys had maybe a half dozen people sort of filming on the wall. I mean, only a couple people on the wall, but then sort of half dozen people in base camp trying to make this film.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we were all going to be doing the trek together. We were all going to hike out there together, this like 4-day hike and approach. And then, just kind of document it along the way. And then it did get a little sideways.
Because of COVID stuff or whatever.
Because of COVID. Yeah. We basically started our trip. We hiked in 2 days, which was a feat for someone like myself, who's not a huge trekker, big mountain person. And we got in there and Adrian had started feeling sick. And so he just took it upon himself to take a COVID test. And he tested positive, like after 2 days hiked in. And then it was basically like a whole day of us, not really me trying to figure out what to do. Yeah. What was feasible, what was okay, because of the fact that it was a big production and HBO and all that stuff. And you probably know, as you've done bigger and bigger things, like the logistics get crazier and crazier. It's not just like me with a couple of my homies going out. Like it's like, and up until then we had all been getting so many COVID tests before. It was just unfortunate, the timing that it still got through the team somehow.
Yeah, actually, can you contrast the logistics and the team dynamic of something like this HBO project with something like Pretty Strong, where it's basically you filming one strong woman climbing hard, depending on the segment? But... Sure.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're just a lot more malleable, I would say, on a small thing. And the stakes are a lot less in a sense. When I went with one filmer to shoot the Mexico segment of Pretty Strong, which is with this woman, Fernanda Rodriguez. And
that's my wife's favorite segment. I like that segment too. It's really good. The music's insane. The climbing's great. Like, actually, Sonny was just talking about that the other day. She was contrasting some other climbing films she'd just seen. She's like, it wasn't nearly as good as that segment. Pretty Strong.
Awesome.
That's a great segment.
Yeah. And I mean, we just showed up. I didn't know Fernanda. She didn't really have she kind of had a project, not really. And Leslie, who's more of a ski filmer and photographer, it was kind of, we had been filming her for 3 days and she's sort of falling at the crux, like, who knows? And Leslie's like, so, is she going to do this? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe not. And she's like, what? She's like, so we're out here shooting all this and she might not do it. I'm like, well, yeah, like that's climbing. Like